For my very first Payday 3 challenge run, I thought I'd test the waters as to what's actually possible in the game as of launch. I ran a poll on Twitter, and the results suggested that you wanted me to suffer on the highest Overkill difficulty for all future attempts. So, I'm happy to deliver, and hopefully in the process, make the point that very hard would be far better suited for my future, more limited runs. You see, today's challenge is going to be almost purely based on the innate challenge Overkill offers a solo player, as this rule set will be by far the simplest I've ever ran. Simply, I must complete all 8 launch heists from No Rest for the Wicked all the way to Touch the Sky on Overkill difficulty. This must be achieved in solo, offline play without any external assistance, and most importantly, the heist must be finished and predominantly played in loud. I'm not allowing myself any stealth specific skills and will never go past the halfway point of the heist without masking up and being detected. Outside of these 3 rules underpinning the challenge, I've decided there will be no additional limiting factors. I'll be playing on the Kknowley account, which is above level 100, with access to all weapons, equipment, skill points and tools. Furthermore, all loud strategies, no matter how cheesy they might appear, are also fair game. This is as a result of my assumption that this will be the toughest challenge I've ever faced on this channel. Whilst Overkill is a breeze for a competent team to complete, it's a completely different story for a solo player. Payday 3 is built from the ground up as a co-op game predominantly. Heists are designed with cooperation in mind, and the crew AI you're lumped with are entirely unprepared for this difficulty, dying within a couple of seconds out of cover on it. For those of you coming from the future, this is a reminder of the microcosm that patch 1.0 Payday 3 was, as I'm sure things will change and get better over time. Especially with the transporter skill line not yet added to the game, bag carrying is also likely going to be a nightmare. All that said, I don't expect this challenge to bring me anything other than concentrated misery, so strap yourselves in for a lot more Yelwonkk rage than I expect you've ever witnessed before, as we find out if you complete Payday 3 on Overkill, solo, loud. I've decided it makes sense to go through the heists in order of their narrative chronology, but obviously for a run like this one that has no specific progression, which is probably a good thing in Payday 3 right now, it really doesn't matter what order I complete them in. With that in mind, SCB is up first, the No Rest for the Wicked heist, which I expect to be the simplest clear in the entire challenge. People were managing this one at level 22 in the beta, so surely I can do it now at level 100, especially when going equipped with one of the strongest looking builds in the game. If you didn't know, this is the VF7S, pretty much the undisputed best gun in Payday 3 at launch, being set up for a safer, longer range playstyle specifically for this heist. I've paired it with the Signature 403 and built into the very powerful Moa tree for ammo sustain, tank including last man standing for survivability, and my favourite sharpshooter and enforcer core to maintain almost endless uptime on edge and grit. This is my not kidding around build, which makes sense as I plan to pull 0 punches on this run. I also went in with a couple of manipulator skills, specifically Stockholm Syndrome, as I knew I couldn't rely on the AI to revive me in a pinch, but generally found this a little too cumbersome to make use of solo. Heading in for run number 1, things started about as well as you can imagine, with my crew AI immediately showing their true colours as police imposters by shooting at the first responders, instantly ending negotiations. Trust me when I say this is the first of many similarly rage-inducing incidents involving these lunatics. Look no further than a couple of minutes later when Hoxton and Dallas managed to get themselves taken down before the thermite had even been dropped. And even better, for whatever reason, they'd lost their corporeal forms, becoming impossible to revive, and instead just forced me to waste most of my own armor pool trying to get them back on their feet. It was around this point that I decided that this was a true solo run, and the longer these supposed allies stayed in custody, the better for me. I had an incredibly close call whilst picking up the thermite a record 5 minutes into the heist, but at least the crew AI could slightly redeem themselves by dropping some armor and health, their one valuable quality. Ideally, they'd stay in custody the entire heist, outside of those breaks in the assault. At the very least, the floor-cutting section of the heist was quite uneventful, being one of the few areas on this run where the crew AI don't get disintegrated within 10 seconds. Unfortunately, after starting to loot the vault and move the cash to the road, I was immediately humbled and reminded that the only time I can really do anything on solo Overkill is between assault waves, as the boys are not really capable of moving the loot under a hail of sniper fire. This little escape cost me all of my bots again, and most of my armor supply, but at least I was able to live and head back inside. Using the next break in the assault, I managed to trudge over to the main road and escape zone again, lowering the bollards and smoothly dispatching of this cloaker. Remember, in Payday 3, even as the last man alive, they won't show any mercy and will still one-shot me, potentially ending a run at any time. Speaking of one-shots, I failed to deal with this sniper laser trained on me in time, losing all 4 bars of armor in a single shot, which forced me to drop my last remaining armor supply. Despite holding off quite effectively at the roadside thanks to my red fox, I was eventually found by a cloaker who put an end to attempt 1. The second attempt started far better. I actually managed to keep my bloodthirsty crew away from the beat cops, allowing me to set up the thermite and chuck this guy in his fancy shirt into the elevator, cutting off one of the SWAT's main spawn points. As a result, I was able to enter the vault far easier this time, but being this efficient actually worked against me, with dozers spawning in far sooner and cornering me within the claustrophobic vault area. How this one didn't finish me off I will never know, unless Last Man Standing activated without its UI element. I'm just assuming he took pity on me, enabling me to start moving the loot out the vault immediately. Unfortunately, the damage was already done, and with me unwilling to place down my armor bag so far from the escape, I ended up ragdolling into a window shortly after. If there's one huge benefit of failing runs in Payday 3, it's that watching Wolf go flaccid will never not be funny. Now, after this run, I have 3 hours of missing footage. Unfortunately, I lost the video portion of 8 entire failed attempts, which I will be chalking up, but honestly you haven't missed out on much, just more face planting and rage at my crewmates. Moving on to run 11, you'll see that I have at least started to attempt a new strategy for SCB. Now, I'm packing engineer skills and a pair of sentries, who are just simply superior, more loyal teammates than the 3 idiots you're left with normally. This adaptation, however, did require me to clean up my gameplay without any spare armor bags, and if you've watched me in this channel for long enough, clean isn't the word I'd ever use for how I like to play Payday games. Fast and loose would be more fitting, so breaking those ingrained habits wasn't the easiest. Even so, the turrets were excellent within the confined space of the bank itself, easily holding down the vault whilst I started moving the cash. The problems really emerged when I started to try and move, losing all my armor in a heartbeat and eventually going down for good whilst animation locked, trying a last gasp sentry placement. As you can see, the 10 previous runs hadn't really led to a much more refined strategy, as I simply kept bashing my head up against this challenge. Things were moving at record speed on the next attempt, which once again is a curse disguised as a blessing, as it forces dozers on me early. Here I hop down to deal with this SWAT van antenna, which is simply a necessity on this challenge, bearing in mind breaks in the assault are the only times you can really get anything done, only to be completely blindsided by a dozer who went through my entire health and armor pool in just a couple of seconds, before securing a quadra kill by ending my entire crew single-handedly before they could secure the revive. Honestly, dozers in Payday 3 feel like they're playing with Payday 2 builds, finally getting revenge for all those years of busted Stoic and Kingpin. On run 13, I again managed to control the heist successfully for the thermite portion, making use of infrasonic mines to stun the sabotage squad upon arrival, one of my favourite techs in any objective-focused build. This time, I successfully managed to sprint over to the escape with my entire crew, leaving the money at the harder escape to reach from the bank, but failing to lower the bollards in time. As such, I decided to make peace with the staff toilets, as will become a bit of a theme on this challenge, taking refuge alongside my sentry guns in the area I've now coined Branch Bathroom, not to be confused for Big Bathroom or the toilet tech. Come on, keep up. There I managed to hold out until I got brave enough to go head to head with a bulldozer, sacrificing one of my all-important sentries and far less significant crewmates. Sadly, instead of trusting the bathroom strat, I tried to revive Chains, downing myself in the process, and he of course was completely incapable of returning the favour without getting stuck on a wall, leading to an unceremonious end to this promising attempt. At this stage, I had the entire opening half of the heist down to a fine science. Secure some civs, trade them for more setup time, pick-lock the ammo supply in the security room, set up a hostage in the lift. Now I've called it a lift and an elevator, so everyone can be angry with me. I was also taking just enough damage to hit that 50% armor mark in order to prompt the AI to drop somewhere I needed it most. This led to easy clears up to the die pack section of the heist, where I nearly forgot what I was doing, so majestic was this endless falling man trick. After disarming them though, this is where things often went a little astray, with this cloaker managing to nothing personal kid me, completely leaving my field of vision to execute this takedown. As much as these guys do my head in, you've got to admit they're a proper threat again. After surviving that close encounter and setting up at the south escape, this time I managed to lower all 4 bollards and secure an overkill weapon for the next push to come, dispatching this dozer in just a couple of shots. This left me armorless and needing to make a couple of clutch saving shots to grab a little insurance and stay on my feet, with this heavy SWAT managing to fall down a hole before landing another crushing blow. Payday 3's physics are already competing with the diesel engine for pure slapstick comedy value, and I for one am delighted to see that. From there, I was able to get back on my feet, assemble the gang once again, and showcase the overwhelming power of the Scar to push out to the escape, which had just arrived at the northern location. This caught me off guard, leading to a completely thoughtless play, securing the first loot bag to immediately prompt the final charge, an endless assault that could easily doom this promising attempt. I simply had to get the bollards down now before the spawn intensity caught up with me, as kiting would be the only hope, leaving my crew AI in the dust as I flanked back around the bank, hitting some of the juiciest 50 cal collaterals you've ever seen in the process. With Dallas finally doing his job and distracting a few cops, I was able to make it back onto the road, just in time to start moving the final few bags needed for the escape, getting out of there without a second thought. For reference, I expected this to be the easiest heist in the run, and it had just taken almost 5 hours to complete. Not a great start. Especially when we have Road Rage next, one of the 2 likely hardest heists in the game, at least from my theory crafting behind this run. I decided to go for a bit of a build overhaul heading into this one, dropping my mower skills for Infiltrator and Quick Fingers, adding Disengage to help deal with Cloakers, and maintaining my Sentry skills in Engineer. The initial strategy was just to try riding the armoured transport for as long as possible with the turrets for backup, actually switching over to the powerful Castigo and consistent Northwest AR, just for its lack of recoil. Now I wasn't running recoil handling. Run 1 was essentially a scouting run, as it was essential I memorised what all the heist objectives were to speed the van through the initial section of the heist. I set up the turrets on the van's bonnet before grabbing a body shield for what feels like the longest walk in the game. Chains and Hoxton weren't long for this world, with Dallas getting confused and joining them shortly after. Eventually, the spawns got too intense and I could no longer hold the sieve in the direction of all damage sources, entering last man standing and going down permanently shortly after. Hoxton survived a bit longer on run 2, but that was mostly because he was being shoved along by the van itself. I had brought along the zipline favour for this one, so in a moment of complete selfishness decided to abandon the ship, leaving Timmy and Tommy, my 2 turrets, and Hoxton to their fate. Unfortunately, the SWATs are pretty damn good at landing shots on you whilst ziplining, leaving me with no armour by the time I reached the scaffolding. This led to a brief and not so exciting holdout as the cops caught up and rushed me down. I tried a little more aggression on run 3, using my primary more actively and keeping Timmy and Tommy off the van's hood. I'm in a very Anglo-American mood apparently today. This led to me successfully holding out at this north-facing outcrop that can be a potential escape point once the heat got too much. Sadly, my crew AI hated taking sensible cover and quickly found themselves bleeding out. This is where my machine friends were more powerful, as at least they stand still, holding a side each whilst I was just about survived the assault in between them. But after Change decided to drop a med bag instead of armour, I was left completely exposed for the next wave. On the plus side, I'm pretty sure Hoxton learned how to fly when attempting to move the van on a little further, which could be a useful skill for the future, before taking refuge again, but being quickly overran and cloaked before my turrets could come to the rescue. On the 4th attempt, I combined the zipline and turret holdout strategy, but again was left without any armour to speak of, using last man standing to try and save the crew AI from themselves, but they really do just embrace death on this difficulty, leading to my death just a few seconds later when Timmy was finally breached. Clearly, I was barking up the wrong tree with this strategy. I backed out of the heist to reset RNG and add the additional loot secure favour, as I decided the zipline was doing more harm than good. I also took the opportunity to switch over to the SA-A144, a longer range rifle that's well suited to this heist and can one-shot cops, making the potential assault wave holdouts a little more manageable. I also decided to leave Timmy and Tommy at home as I just couldn't trust the crew AI to drop me any armour at this point and needed to bring my own. I truly refined my initial strategy by this attempt, even setting up mines to stun the cops once they started spawning in behind me, giving me the opportunity to sprint to the escape zone uncontested. Whilst this build was a lot more active, I was missing the turret twins at the holdout, taking a lot more direct damage due to not being able to hold down both entrances at once. In the end, I was worn down and again unable to interact with my crewmates for some reason, still not learning my lesson that they are complete liabilities right now. Okay, so north doesn't work. I guess I'll try the south escape. It can't hurt, and the only reason I've been avoiding it so far is to stay out of the line of sight of the smokestack snipers. Once again, I set up, pushed for as long as I could before blowing the stun mines and racing for safe refuge to the south. The cops pursuing were easy pickings for the SA to deal with, as they refused to flank me, a good omen that will come in handy later on. This first assault was just a case of repelling my pursuers and dealing with the consistently spawning snipers, before again heading out between waves to progress the van along the right side of the road. Little by little, we were inching towards the elevated platform, this time grabbing an overkill weapon, as I got slightly greedy during the assault build-up and needed the firepower to push back. Except this time, strangely, the only one who seemed to follow me was a cloaker, making me glad I'd pivoted to the disengage skill for my first time in Payday 3. The other SWATs seemed clueless as I picked off the few who strolled into my path. Instead, I could pour all my focus into sniper control until the crew AI showed up and caused a bit of a ruckus, drawing attention to us. It was suddenly dawning on me. The cops, be it for spawn or pathing reasons, couldn't comprehend my position here unless I expressly led them to it, meaning, after another break in the assault, this time pushing the van right next to my holdout spot, I could go almost AFK between assault waves, only keeping the spawning snipers in check about 4 times each assault. After 2 more uneventful waves, I had the van right where I wanted it, drilling inside, before returning next time around to picklock half the deposit boxes using quick fingers. So long as I was back in my hiding place before the wave properly began, I was essentially immortal, and for once, the crew AI didn't mind sticking with me on this one, meaning even cloakers weren't much of a threat to us, creating a hanging decoration just to make it even more homely for the next 20 minutes of this cheese. And let me tell you, I was fully committed to this approach at this point. I'm not sure I've ever been this patient within a Payday game, only popping my head out between waves to push the needle on this heist just slightly closer to completion. I'm amazed they just kept sending snipers up these smokestacks, as I must have wiped out multiple legions of New York's finest marksmen across over 40 minutes of this heist, slowly collecting a set of cloaker corpses as they were the only ones seemingly aware of my presence. In the end, I had enough open boxes to secure the loot down the chute before straight up bucking it out of there. For about 30 minutes I'd entered into a bit of a zen mode, so the heart rate rush for this escape was even more pronounced, knowing that a slip up here would cost at least another half hour of my life. 30 minutes I wasn't willing to just hand over, as I sprinted past the final charge spawns and managed to brute force my way down to the escape, making this the most unexpected but also cheesiest clear of my Payday playing history. Sadly, this is just what solo Overkill in Payday 3 forces you to do, and is my main reasoning behind wanting to challenge run on lower difficulties, as no matter what the rule set, on Overkill, hiding in that escape will always be the dominant and fairly boring strategy, as cool as it was to discover the first time. Dirty Ice is at least a nice change of pace as a predominantly indoor heist on which we can actually function during assault waves instead of just hunkering down. I switched over to my Rheinfeld shotgun build for this one, as it's mostly close quarters, still using ammo funnel and replenish for potentially endless damage. I made use of the stealth portion of this heist to quickly turn off the power in the VIP room and grab the red keycard, before quickly tying down the manager to get cleaning those diamonds. The idea behind cleaning the jewelry was to ensure my escape with fewer bags, but honestly, I'm not sure I needed to bother. The Rheinfeld is exceptionally well suited to this heist and just tears through most cops on it effortlessly. The only thing holding me back was my crew, who just love to stand out in the open and embrace death even when there's so much safe cover inside. We really need to be able to command them to stop and follow sooner rather than later. Even so, things were under control as I started to move the bags closer to the road for pickup, until a cloaker completely blindsided me in the half second I looked away. Of course, the AI weren't able to help, but then something kinda strange happened. Last Man Standing activated during the cloaker beatdown, leading to me becoming invincible right as I was meant to get cuffed. In turn, this led to a 90-second straight beatdown, with Wallflat looking like a mashed potato after it, only for Dallas to return to save the day, but not very well, as before I could even ready my weapon, the cloaker was back on me and Dallas was, as Dallas does best, taking a dirt nap halfway across the room. Already, the Payday 3 failures are a bit special, to say the least. This wasn't a huge setback though, as I'm happy to enjoy the most atmospheric heist in the game just a little longer. Before going loud this time, I quickly secured the large diamond thanks to the escape van asset to give me a better idea of what I was dealing with loot-wise, although this meant I had to sprint back to the entrance to prevent the manager from getting splattered, which is the inevitable consequence of New York jewelry heists, apparently. At least that bloodshed isn't held against your heist payout. Back inside the store, I must have hallucinated here because after asking the manager specifically to follow me inside to the facial scanner, I actually traded her for negotiation time, but you can still imagine my surprise when I turned around and saw this fella in her place and heard we'd lost the manager. Oh well, this might have been a blessing in disguise in the end, as I simply had to round up the bags of unclean jewelry and chuck them outside, before calling in Bile about 3/4 of the way through an assault to try and time the fade. I was about a minute off on this, meaning the escape was quickly surrounded, but I had more than enough jewelry to rapidly confirm the third, comparatively simple heist completion of the run. Nice to have done it without expressly breaking anything, which was good karma going into Rock the Cradle. Now of course, with a little bit of stealth wizardry, this is one of the easiest Overkill clears in the game, but we've seen that 100 times before. This has to be done the hard way today, meaning I switch builds once again, planning to put the FIK through its paces. Although SMGs are relatively weaker, when paired with a very ammo efficient secondary like the Castigo, they actually excel for long duration holdouts, and can work nicely alongside the right setup. The start of attempt 1 didn't go brilliantly, managing to get myself telepathically cuffed before needing to call on the B team to help me out. This all but guaranteed loud from the start, which stings as it meant I had to take the time out to drill access to the VIP basement. Once down there though, the FIK showed what it was made of, comfortably controlling the staircase up to the accounts room whilst I waited out the keypad hack. This nightclub is full of these back against the wall holdouts that allow you to push through each wave assuming you have enough damage in your build, which was exactly the case here until I decided to switch over to the lift shaft and start moving some of the loot. Suddenly this felt like a late round of Nazi zombies as I was rushed by wave after wave of SWATs, holding on to the possibility of using the zipline for a final second escape. That was until a first cloaker forced me into using disengage, and a second turned the corner to take me down permanently, as once again the AO were back in their favourite location, behind bars. Heading in a second time, I briefly thought I'd softlock myself out of the basement, but fortunately the fleeing civs did me a favour and opened it up. This gave me a slight head start during negotiation, as I was able to start up the hack and move the cage into place before the first assault wave really got going. Once again, I held out in the accounts office whilst procuring the code for the vault, using my endless supply of flashbangs to control the staircase and turn it into a blue and black corpse party. I actually think that office is the best holdout on this heist, as the AI don't walk into their death quite as willingly, but seeing as the vault itself has so many layers to fall back into, I was baited into holding off there for the next few waves. Sadly, the crew AI are not so sensible over here, as I tossed out a motion sensor to get a feel for what I was dealing with, only to see my boys had wandered into a Payday 2 style assault wave of over 10 angry cops. This forced me back inside, but the FIK and most notably the Castigo did a really good job of holding off the oncoming surge, as they seemed to struggle to get their bearings before being one-tapped by the almighty Edge revolver. I started sending up the loot bags via the lift shaft zipline, one of the best placed ziplines in the game right now, as so long as I stayed in the basement, it was unlikely any cops would spawn close enough to want to tamper and move them. Hearing the sound of the FBI van, I was forced outside after this wave to deal with it, grabbing a red fox for my troubles before flanking back to the zipline. Those Nazi zombie comparisons really are quite apt, as training SWATs has become a very viable strategy in Payday 3. After wasting all my 50 cal ammo though, I was forced to go toe to toe with a Dozer Cloaker combo, just about winging one whilst I revived my crewmates to act as bait versus the all-powerful Bulldozer. The FIK just about had the damage to deal with him before I ate more armor damage, once again retreating back to the depths of the vault for another incredibly sweaty 5-minute holdout. This time, I decided to start moving the bags to the escape, mostly just to feel out how the cops would approach my loot, realising I needed to grab 2 more bags anyway as I was short. Fortunately, only 3 of the bags were taken back by the SWATs, before again they started spawning in concentrated numbers down below. Honestly, I thought the jig might be up when this Dozer charged me point blank, but he really failed to take advantage of it, allowing me another couple of minutes respite. I think I could have held out here indefinitely, such as the insane ammo efficiency of the Castigo, as a second Dozer charged me from down the corridor, only to seemingly follow through too far and get himself stuck in the wall behind me. This time I spent far too long trying to recover my stolen bags and was forced back underground without making much progress between waves. On the plus side, I managed to grab another red fox which I used to dispatch another Dozer as the vault was rapidly overran. It's a good job these guys seemed to trip over each other on the way in, as chains lasted for all of 2 seconds when he returned from custody, and again chose death, as I'm pretty sure they'd do the same thing to me if I wasn't able to confuse their targeting logic. Once again, the end of the wave was poorly timed, but the chaos and mess downstairs was an indication that it was probably time to go. Don't even ask me how that zapper got up there, I have no idea. With the next assault drawing closer, I smashed through the glass roof to call in the escape, looping around the heist to try and draw as much attention away from the loot itself, popping another bulldozer in 2 shots before rushing back to the zipline as the chopper came in. Only 1 bag had been stolen back, meaning all I had to do was flash out and stand back on the escape zone to complete Rock the Cradle in just over 30 minutes. You're probably starting to get the meta of solo overkill at this point. Find a comfy hole to hide in, repel the assault wave while screaming at the crew AI to stop killing themselves, and only complete objectives during the fades in the assault. It's not the most compelling gameplay, but Payday 3's gunplay is so rewarding to me, I'm not even that mad. I do feel like it's slightly enforced by the crew AI being suicidal maniacs though, so keep that in mind. Anyway, next up I switched over to the Ku-59 for Under the Surface. This is an interesting heist, as once you understand it, all objectives become completely fluid and you can basically complete them in any order you want. It's just worth remembering that if you do complete later objectives first, they can bring forward Dozer spawns and endless assaults, so it's probably in your best interest to set up for the escape in one go, instead of actually completing this one in segments. As such, I grabbed the faster escape chopper favour and headed in silently to get a head start on the assault waves. I used this brief moment of stealth to open up the manager's office, find the painting rooms and crack his safe, just so I didn't have to mess around with the fiddly objectives mid-assault. I was spotted on a camera shortly after, but was still able to grab the spectrophotometer, try saying that 3 times fast, before the first responders arrived. I was also able to start disabling the upper floor security bars via a little GTFOing for a head start there. Unlike Road Rage or Rock the Cradle, this heist is maze-like enough to stay on top of most objectives even during the assault, so long as you keep moving and have solid firepower, which the AK most certainly packs, being one of the best feeling guns in the game. I quickly located the USB painting, but didn't pick it up as that prompts the final charge apparently, instead heading downstairs to unlock those security bars too. My gameplay here was a little bit more fast and loose, but it was nice to finally not have to camp in a corner, instead using the map's structure to my advantage as I secured the final necessary QR codes to steal the ground floor artwork. The FBI van's arrival forced me outside, where this guy apparently got sent to the next dimension. Never changed, Payday. With that satellite down, I was able to drag the SWATs on a merry chase around the map before forcing my way back inside while my crew acted as decent distractions. I realised I'd actually managed to corner myself though, again hunkering down in the manager's office where Chains decided to be a hero and just refused to follow me inside to safety. In any case, we held out the rest of the assault and I quickly grabbed the paintings in order to finally call in Bile for pickup. Immediately, we were now facing down heavy SWATs and dozers, chewing through my final overkill weapon rounds at the start of the next wave. Again, with cloakers about, I was forced to put my back up against a wall in the security room, taking cover behind the door to keep the SWATs at bay, alone this time. With the incredibly powerful flashbang throwable, I was just about able to match their onslaught, with this dozer deciding to show mercy and just walk off thanks to the end of the assault wave. That was like the sun coming up at the last minute in a bloody vampire film. I somehow avoided getting sniped up on the rooftop to secure the Vicario paintings before heading back down to the top floor to grab the Ledette painting I'd verified earlier, jumping directly into the escape chopper and completing this heist with only the 4 mandatory paintings secured. That was a fun one, but you know what won't be? Golden Shark, going from 4 required loot bags to about 10 on one of the largest heists in the game is bound to sting. Again, I tried switching back over to the northwest, as I'd been told by a reputable source that this thing slaps, before heading into the big bank for a little casing of the joint. The plan was to stealth up to the vault entrance if possible, as once I knew the code, I could just keep retrying from that point of the heist due to the game's fixed RNG. Unfortunately, after finding the red keycard in attempt 1, I slipped up and was forced loud, leading to a tortuously slow Wi-Fi hacking objective that left me a couple of armor plates worse off. Bile dropped the drill outside, which is not great RNG when you have the zipline favour, which is almost a necessity on this heist in my opinion. I was forced back outside with Last Man Standing acting as the only barrier to death, despite the end of the assault wave coming just in time. I was able to set up the thermal lance before the army of the vault doors managed to stroll their way inside, flanking up the rooftops and ziplining back down to the main hall. From there, I manoeuvred back down to the basement to grab some oxygen tanks for the lance, using the heist layout to again confuse the enemy AI. Sadly, I got a little bogged down here as the cops started spawning on both sides, and with the northwest being just too damage anemic to push through cleanly, I lost a few more plates of armor before finally making it through the toughest wave so far. Thinking I was in the clear, I got the drill started up again and headed outside to deal with the recently arrived FBI van, taking out its antenna, but at the cost of all of my armor, as I failed to realise that heading up to the roof earlier had caused snipers to spawn, and it just so happens they have the perfect line of sight to the parking lot entrance. A crushing blow that I couldn't recover from, going down like a lead brick on the stairwell back up to my armor bag. On attempt 2, I got quite a bit further in stealth, actually working out the vault code and managing to take hostages before going loud. Sadly, all this progress seemed to achieve was a more intense assault wave immediately, including cloakers. I initially defended the thermal lance quite effectively, until my crewmates got themselves stuck down in the basement seeking out some additional oxygen supplies. I held out at the vault itself for a well-timed break in the assault, finally entering and grabbing the first bags. Unfortunately, I seriously overestimated the vault itself as a viable holdout spot, failing to realise I just didn't have the DPS to keep on top of those waves of cops alone, with the crew AI once again becoming a heavy burden. In the end, we were gassed out as I completely underestimated its radius, allowing the cops to encircle the only viable cover, leaving me and Last Man Standing as cloakers and SWATs put a sorry end to this run. Knowing the vault code though, attempt 3 got off to a flying start. Once again I was able to get the drill up and running early on, retreating this time into another holdout location, this one fondly known as Shark Shitter, another top tier toilet strategy thanks to the very abusable stall doors. Annoyingly, I was unable to protect the drill from sabotage squads whilst on the toilet, meaning it was quickly put out of action, as I was just forced to wait inside, lest I get the crew AI treatment for daring to try and escape the comfort of the commode. After this first assault, I decided to give Wolf's nostrils a break and try holding down in the basement, as again, there's only one way into the locker room. Sadly, the intensity and fervour with which the SWATs like to assault downstairs is significantly greater than in the bathroom, can't imagine why, meaning after losing the AI for the umpteenth time, I was actually getting overwhelmed even within this side room, which forced my hand as I had to drop the armour early. One wave later, and it was all just too much as my dying crewmates managed to bait out a perfect gas grenade which filled up the entire room, trapping me for an unavoidable third death. I guess carrying hostages around really does seem worthwhile after this one. I decided that my current build just wasn't doing the damage it needed to, switching back to the VF7S, specifically the hipfire variant from this video, which I truly believe is the best build in the game, for what I'm expecting to be the toughest heist in this run. The infrasonic mines were also worth pivoting to as an additional time waster for the sabotage team to get the vault open one wave faster. Again, the first attempt on this new RNG seed was a scouting run, finding the keycard with the branch manager but slipping up before I could find the correct keypad code. This led to a disastrously bad Wi-Fi objective struggle, losing over 7 plates of armor on the first assault, although the FBI van spawning at the end of the wave gave me a brand new idea. What if I held off at the upper floor offices, further away from the most intense spawns? In all honesty, heading into the following wave, outside of my crew AI insisting on death, this was a fantastic pivot, with the Scar and Castigo basically one-shotting everyone on the assault team. This was a comparatively easy holdout, going yet another wave before finally setting up the drill to move the heist forward. You've really got to appreciate all the work the mocap team put into producing some of these absolutely hilarious ragdolls, which make even scummy strategies like this one satisfying to play through. During the next break in the assault, I got caught out down in the basement, unable to actually get up to my hiding spot again, instead rushing up to the branch manager's office, which turns out to be an even more broken holdout spot, with cops filtering in incredibly slowly as I took cover behind the bookshelf. However, despite how foolproof this hiding spot appeared to be, it wasn't immune to a sneaky gas leakage, as the Grenadier once again managed to thread the needle and down me right after the drill finished its job. At this point, it feels like almost every special enemy has claimed a victory on this run, it's just the poor Zapper who hasn't had his moment to shine. Yet. As next up, I once again went further in stealth, finding the new door code and cutting the objectives on this heist in half for all future attempts at this seed. This time, I decided to just hold out downstairs from the get-go, stunning the sabotage squad from my hiding spot when they got too close to the drill, and allowing the crew AI to wander into the abyss as I had the damage to control the room alone. Only cloakers were a real threat, as it seems the Grenadiers will only throw gas when they have line of sight to a target. In between fades, I ran off and completed my errands, before returning to set up camp all over again. One wave I was forced to the second floor again to deal with the FBI van, but this was just a nice change of scenery, as the Scar was doing so much heavy lifting whilst even going positive on ammo. Eventually, the pile of bodies was enough to sort of dissuade the rest of the NYPD from bothering to enter the room, as this seems to be another location where without AI, the cops will just struggle to track you down. Once inside the vault, I started shifting the loot in sets of 4, using the zipline to send them up to the roof, and then heading back downstairs before the wave started to avoid them being repossessed. Pushing back out at the end of waves could be a little tricky as the cops tend to bundle together, and dozers still possessed a tangible threat, but never enough to truly scare me. Eventually, the SWATs just seemed to permanently lose track of me, wandering into the office completely clueless and getting a swift round to the back of the head, complete with impressive acrobatics. After almost 50 minutes of this laborious but not particularly difficult process, I finally had what I believe to be enough bags in position to secure the escape. I sprinted to the roof, chucking in 11 bags, except one was the server, which doesn't count as regular loot, leaving me on a painstaking 99% completion rate. I needed to find more cash quickly, but the assault was already upon me. Instantly, I ziplined back down to the vault, leaving my bots to their doom at the hands of the snipers. This loose cash wasn't enough, so I pitlocked my way into the final cage and secured it, the final percent. But the wave was already upon me. My Red Fox cleared the first battery, cleaving through another dozer before a cloaker made it through and used up my one and only charge of disengage. But that was surely enough. I had last man standing, so with a grit stack I was looking at 10 seconds of invulnerability, enough to push past the SWATs and back up to the roof. Sure enough, it activated, but at the final moment a Zapper finally saw his opportunity, stunning me in place with no disengage available just outside of my tase turning circle, holding me still whilst the 50-minute run crumbled in front of me. Of course, the weakest, least relevant enemy type in the game ruined the most agonizing run so far. Even in Payday 2, across hours of panic room and biker heist, I've not had a defeat this crushing, so drink it in. However, at least I'd learned a fairly foolproof strategy, jumping straight back in, grabbing the keycard and inputting the same vault code. Going loud immediately from there, I set up the drill again and returned to my home base for the best part of the next hour, grabbing a sieve this time to keep Grenadiers a little more honest. Again, I spent one wave on the upper floor to deal with the FBI van, before defaulting back to the downstairs office for the next several assault waves. This was the first time I can remember dropping frames in Payday 3, so impressive were the body piles right outside the door as I tried to milk the most out of each police regrouping phase. I also learned to consistently store a sniper in the room with me in case a dozer needed the old 2-shot treatment at any time. This was a much bloodier attempt than before, eating its way through all my armor supplies and actually leaving me quite fragile towards the end of it, with the AI refusing to drop more than 2 bags on Overkill. In the end, by the skin of my teeth, this was just enough. Going down for the first time during the final hostage trading phase, where at last my crew proved their worth, picking me back up, to race up to Bile on the rooftop, securing all the bags before being taken down once again, but fortunately within the escape zone. Claiming the most touch-and-go victory so far, with a body count up in the 600s, which is pretty insane considering Payday 3's milder spawn rate. Apparently, this also took me longer than I remembered. Sorry, does that say 19 hours? It was actually about 54 minutes according to my recording, but you know what, after the previous failure it might as well have taken 19 hours to force my way through this challenge's greatest obstacle so far. That said, we're not out the woods yet, as I believe 99 boxes is the toughest Overkill heist in the game, especially when playing normally online. Except here, we were playing Payday 3 about as abnormally as possible, so after stealthing through the initial objectives and throttling this eager gentleman who apparently can see the PC hack in progress, I went loud as I ziplined across to the first component container. We all know what this heist is about by now, so let's not get too sticky with the details, as I decided to actively defend the initial thermite drop out in the open. This wasn't ideal, taking a lot more damage than I would have liked, but at least I traded those plates of armor for surprisingly rapid completion of these initial objectives, even activating the internal security hacks mid-assault. The SA, for the second time on this run, was proving its worth as one of the premium one-shot kill weapons in the game, granting me surprising map control early into this attempt. During the first police fade, I managed to get my hands on an impressive load and secure it before it lost value, securing the second lot Wixia container to call back Bile. It was here that I decided to find a nice new holdout spot, using the cash store for cover, which only a cloaker was able to breach, forcing me to waste disengage early on. Oh well, this was still a power position, safe from sniper spawns, or so I assumed, as after closing the door once more, it was shown to be a bit more than just a power position. Apparently, this transparent glass door is magic, as all SWATs just stare aimlessly into the abyss when you're closed in behind it. I couldn't shoot them, and they couldn't fathom my existence, making for quite the strange and unnerving Mexican standoff. This continued until the crew AI respawned, proving the cops were very much still up for a fight, just not with the chosen one in the sperm tanker. The only problem was, at the end of an assault wave, I was so well surrounded that rushing back to complete objectives was actually very dangerous, as the retreating SWAT still posed a serious threat to me, using up a few chunks of armor as I went to grab the thermite. Not to worry though, the crew picked me up again and I settled back down within the safe zone, until I found out it wasn't quite the impenetrable refuge I thought it was, after one seemingly lost SWAT slammed straight through the door, breaking it for good, leaving me exposed to the hostile elements outside. As I'd assumed earlier, whilst this was a buggy haven, it was also quite a safe hiding spot regardless, even when I had to fight back, as I successfully held off another wave just with the power of the SA, setting up to grab the second sack after another hack was complete. This time I decided just to hole up in a different container, as there were plenty left on the map, but unfortunately things didn't go quite to plan, when this cloaker karate kicked his way straight to me. I killed him, but not before he broke my protective door off its hinges, leaving me to struggle to stay afloat alone until a dozer spawned in and took me down for good. Okay, clearly I'm onto something here. Now I just need to adapt and keep my glass doors alive. Run 2 started much the same, push into the shipping yard, grab the thermite and this time hide straight away in the container. No reason not to conserve ammo and health. Again, these early SWATs were clueless and I was completely safe, until our boy Chains decided to spawn inside and yeah, he broke down my bloody door, once again proving that an AI-less run would actually be easier as these idiots are so unpredictable. For what it's worth, I had bought enough time to secure bag number 1, so again I returned to the original glitched hiding spot to take another stand. This time, instead of just sitting with the door closed, I decided to keep it open, dealing with the cops climbing up to me and only closing it when I expressly needed protection. This more active approach was surprisingly successful, as though I took more damage, I retained my safe haven to fall back into whenever I needed to heal my armor up. enabling me to make it to wave 4, where I finally had the time to unlock the internal security again, quickly securing the last drop of loot before running up to the spike strip placement right as the final charge began. Fortunately, most cops on the map had spawned over by the containers and were just slowly funneling their way towards me at this point, and by the time they actually reached me, I was too close to the escape for them to do anything to stop me, confirming the penultimate heist completion in under 25 minutes. That brings us on to one final hurdle. Toilet tech, challenge crapper, power leveling potty, bonus IP bog, the leveling system sucks latrine, I don't know, it's big bathroom, occasionally known as touch the sky. Thanks to my IP farming method, this is probably my most played Overkill heist in the game, so I set up an endless Moscone build, possibly the most fun weapon and skill combination in Payday at launch, before settling down to 20 plus minutes of men's room murder. One slight adaptation here was to start the initial Wi-Fi hack in stealth to speed up that objective to ensure that I was set up and secure by the time the first police wave rolled in, which worked perfectly through negotiation as I brought Mason to wait in the washroom alongside me. The pure double-barrel destruction that occurred next is pretty standard for toilet tech enjoyers, wiping out every SWAT who sidle up to the door with delusions of shutting this caper down. Whilst not the most high-octane gameplay, there is something incredibly cathartic about blasting every passerby to Kingdom Come, with only cloakers really keeping me on edge throughout the heist. Quickly, I got my hands on the red keycard before bringing Mason over to the retina scanner, noting down the codes and returning to the bathroom for another round of shooting fish in a barrel. After sending this cloaker into painful looking spasms, I was clear to open up the personal vault and crack the safe to immediately put my hands on the USB drive, setting it up to decrypt with a mine to keep it safe from sabotage. This wave brought out the heavy SWATs, who were just as one-shot exposed as their unarmed brethren. Eventually, Hoxton spawned back in and broke, which is a blessing in disguise as right now, when the crew AI gets stuck and seemingly lobotomized, if it's possible for them to get less intelligent, they actually gain the ability to revive you from anywhere on the map, so that was a nice boon, this close to victory. But even without him, I think this one was virtually in the bag. Even doses weren't a problem with my impressive supply of red foxes, ready to dispatch them in a couple of clicks. Calling Bile in during the next lull in assault waves, there was just time for me to take down one final dozer before I secured a stack of grit to ensure my survival via last man standing, no matter how fervently the cops tried to body block me, completing Touch the Sky on the first attempt in just over 20 minutes, making this the smoothest clear on the entire run, a testament to the toilet tech reigning supreme. With that, Payday 3's launch storyline is complete, all 8 heists finished, solo, loud on Overkill, and what I consider to be the Payday 3 prologue out of the way. I'd argue that Dirty Ice, Under the Surface and Touch the Sky were probably the perfect level of challenge, but the other 5 were at times a living nightmare or required absolute unabashed cheese to actually complete cleanly. My main frustration with this run, despite completing it in about 18 hours, which is half the length of an easy Payday 2 challenge, was that almost all my failures felt like they came at the hands of something that was mostly out of my control. Some poor RNG, a bad spawn, or even a cloaker ending a run prematurely. In Payday 2, I can almost always pinpoint where I made a mistake and fix it for the next run, but this challenge felt like a complete crapshoot at times, needing to actually break the game or play in a way akin to watching paint dry. Now, a lot of this understanding and improvement on my end will come with time, as I learn the depths of the game's mechanics. Let's not forget, Payday 3's only been out for a couple of weeks. But I feel like as it stands, at least for heists like Road Rage, Golden Shark and Rock the Cradle, every single challenge run will employ the same completely broken strategies, which I worry will get old quickly when compared to the crazy variation we often see in Payday 2. As such, for most limited challenges moving forwards, I'll be testing them out on very hard, at least for the time being, as I think it's still a tough enough solo difficulty, but we can actually experiment with playstyles on it, instead of having to pull out the most mature cheddar each time. That said, stay tuned for the next Payday 3 video and challenge. I have an old classic which defeated me returning soon, so I'm hoping to claim some revenge. As for beating launch Payday 3 solo, loud on Overkill, you absolutely can, but you better have the patience of a saint, willpower of an ox, and be willing to bend the game's logic just a little in your favour. Thanks for watching, take care, I'll see you all very soon. A huge thank you to my dedicated Patreon backers. If you want to join this crew in going infamous, check out the link below and pledge as little as $2 to see your name in the credits, or get 24-hour early access to future videos and vote on upcoming content. Take care, I'll see you all soon.